Hello, my name is Ken. I'm a show-through guide with Myers RV Superstores, and today we're going to do a walk around very quickly just to give you an idea what you might be in store for if you come to one of our facilities and you're here to pick up your RV. We also hope to answer some questions that we frequently get after people have left and maybe their first time out setting up their RV. They tend to get a little confused and they get called with questions that hopefully we can preempt those and you can get some information from this video. So we're going to start right up front. And before we go any further, I get occasionally from people who are experienced RVers, they get very nervous when they go from, say, a motorhome to a towable. And what I generally tell them is all RVs pretty much have the same systems. They will have a water system, a wastewater system. There'll be an electrical system times two. There'll be house power and battery power, and we'll explain as we go along what each of those systems do for the coach. So it really doesn't matter if you're going from a motorhome to a fifth wheel. If you have experience in RVing, it's not a big changeover. It's just a matter of finding the systems where they are and how to control them. So we're going to start up front with propane. And one of the questions I often get is, I noticed that you have these larger tanks. They're larger than your grill. These are 30-pound propane tanks, where a home grill will have 20-pound. Sometimes you'll see coaches with only 20-pound tanks, and the question comes up, can I put 30s on? And we don't recommend that because when they build a coach, they have to plan for the weight around the coach, what's on each side of the coach, what's up front, and so it's not a good day to swap out the tanks to put 30-pound tanks on. But these are 30-pound tanks. They're controlled with a small lever here pointing at the tank that tells you which tank you're on. One of the things we do recommend is working with one tank at a time. So if you should run a tank completely dry, you'll have another tank to switch over to, and you can get the other one filled. At this time, I'm really not going to talk about hitching because our policy at Myers is to have certified technicians that will do the hitch work. I do know how this stuff works, but depending on which hitch you buy and what kind of vehicle you have, there's some variables that we'd rather have the certified installer techs demonstrate the hitch. So we can get to that later. We come around this side, and this is your service panel with what's called a manifold system. This is really pretty handy. I want to get out of the way so you can see this. They have these colored handles. And if you follow the diagram up here, it tells you exactly which way to turn the handles to get the desired function you're looking for. For example, if you're going to winterize the coach, they would tell you which way to put these levers. All you have to do is follow the picture, and this one's already set up pretty much that way. This is set up for winterizing. If you want to de-winterize the coach, you'll move these levers according to the picture diagram that you see here. In addition to controlling your water supply, also your cable and satellite inputs are over here. There's also electric here. So if you have anything you want to plug in out here with house power, not battery power, that's available to you. This is your city water intake. And the convenient thing about this water manifold, you don't have to go around like to the other side of the coach and drag a hose to pour into a tank. There generally is a spot to pour in, but in this case, if you follow the colored knobs, you can actually fill the onboard tank without having to drag a hose around. It'll go right through here. This next item over here is what we call a black tank flush. And what that is a spray system inside the waste tank, the human wastewater tank. And if you connect a hose to that and keep it kind of under low pressure, it actually has spray heads in the tanks that will spray the inside of the tank and help you to clean that tank out. The next thing I want to look at, I'm going to step back here, is this particular slide system. These rails here, our technicians tell us, make sure you do not lubricate those rails. The next thing is these, we refer to them as rubber, but they're actually some compound, but we refer to them as rubber seals. These are the things that flap in and out when you bring a slide in. The edge of the slide will rest against it. When you bring it out, the flaps fold out, and it tends to keep water out of the coach. The only maintenance for this is a spray. It's called rubber seal slide treatment. And you spray that on, it's a white foam, just let it drip. Just don't confuse that with a can called slide lube, which is lithium grease. You don't want that. Okay, that's for a mechanical issue. This is just a white foam. We'll take a walk over here. You see this particular coach has a nice storage area right here. Probably a great place to keep hoses and things. So what you'd want to do is maybe go to like a dollar store and get some plastic totes, but make sure you measure to make sure they fit inside this compartment. Over here we have your hot water heater. This heater works on two sources. It works on electricity, house power, that would be 120 volt. And you can also, with a selector switch inside, turn this on to propane, one or the other. And at a later time, we'll talk about why it's more advantageous to use one or the other. But I will say it does not use as much propane as people think. So it is not prohibitively expensive to run this on propane. And at another time, if we talk about winterization or dewinterization, we'll come back to this. But this is your hot water tank. It has a pressure release just like you have at home. It fills from the bottom once you put a water source to it, which we just spoke about up front. And there's a pressure relief valve just like you have at home. We open that when you're putting water in the coach. When water comes out of it, it's full. And of course, there is a drain plug and a cap right here. Not an awful lot of maintenance to this. Check it once in a while. But the switch for the 12 volt side to light the propane has an automatic igniter that does work on the battery. That's what confuses a lot of people. In order for this to light on propane, if you activate that switch and you were to stand out here, you would hear a ticking sound. And it will tick, tick, tick and try to ignite the propane. Sometimes on a wet, soggy day it misses. It'll try it 3 times by itself, and then inside by the function switch you'll get a little red dot of a light that says DSI, which means direct spark ignition failure. All you have to do is turn that switch off, wait a couple of seconds, turn it on. It'll fire a couple of times. It might blow itself out a couple of times, especially if it's a wet, soggy day. But you can just do a couple of resets, or if it's an awful rainy day and you're connected to electricity, you can turn it on and heat it up on the electric side for a while, and that'll keep you going. Right here, I don't know if the camera can pick this up, it says gray tank, black tank, gray tank. And what this is telling me is you have 3 wastewater tanks. The middle sign here says black tank. We always refer to the black tank as the human waste tank. Gray tanks indicate that it is basically soap water. We call it gray water that comes out of a shower, a sink. And in this case, one of the tanks is dedicated to your kitchen, and it's referred to as a galley tank. I don't know if the camera will pick this up. Probably not. Let me take a quick look on this unit. Your pull handles might be here. Well, here's one of them. This is what your pull handles will look like. This is a gray tank, and so further down the coach there'll be both a gray tank and a black tank, and the handles are actually usually color coded. The only important thing to remember is you open it fully, let it empty. You can almost hear it by sound, or you can check the control panel inside. But more importantly, make sure that you know what this looks like when it's fully closed. If you leave these partly open, especially in the human wastewater tank, you'll lose the water that you need to clean that tank out. So make sure when you empty a tank, you make sure you close it, and make sure you know what it looks like right here when it's fully closed. Walking along here, the next thing I see on this coach is the outlet for tanks. This one indicates, and the pull handles, by the way, are right under here. I don't know if the camera can pick this up. There's 3 in a row, and that lines up with this sign. Sometimes we see manufacturers who don't label them. If they don't label them here, the handles will actually be black and gray. The next thing, this is your plug. If they get a shot of this cord is about 35 feet. 30 to 35 feet is pretty typical. And the reason it's kind of important to know that, myself, when we set up our unit, I kind of like to not to have to put out a lot of sewer hose. So I will, in relation to the service post, try to be closest to where the sewer opening is if your site has a sewer opening and you're not just using your holding tanks. If it's over a weekend and you have to dump your tanks on the way out, they will have a dedicated dump station. But a lot of parks will have sewer right at your site. So this is the power cable. This particular cable on this particular coach is a 50 amp coach. You can see this is a pretty heavy wire. So this is bringing power in. One of the mistakes people make is they will have an electrician come to their house and wire a plug for them, and the electricians aren't familiar with RVs, will wire it incorrectly. And that's a bad thing and can cause a lot of damage to the coach. So we always tell people, if you're going to have an electrician to come to your house, particularly to wire a 50 amp coach, call us first so we can make sure they understand what to do without burning the coach out in the electric systems. This next thing we get a lot of questions on. This is the furnace. Of course, it's a box behind it. It's usually tucked away under something. And this is the intake port and the exhaust port. Now, the exhaust port on this one says hot. This could be in any configuration too. It doesn't necessarily have to be horizontal, it could be vertical. The important thing to remember is they make a stainless steel screen that goes over this. And the reason that's important is after this furnace has been used a few times, there will be an odor inside the hot exhaust that we can't smell. Now, you know you can't smell propane or natural gas, tasteless, colorless, odorless, but we put an odor in it. That's not the odor I'm talking about. The odor that'll be in here that we can't really smell is a trace of sulfur, and bees are attracted. So if people run this in the spring and then don't run it again until fall, and then next year in their second year of camping season, they find out the furnace turns on, it immediately turns off. And you go, what's up with that? Well, what's up with that is for this furnace to work, any RV furnace for safety reasons is different than your house. In your house, the first thing that happens, something heats water and sends it out, or something heats air and sends that out. In this case, in an RV, it has to turn a fan on. That fan comes on first, no heat, no propane fires. It has to turn fast enough, pushing a volume of air hard enough to trip a safety sensor. They call it a sail switch. If the fan isn't turning fast enough, it may be turning but not pushing hard enough, the furnace will shut itself down. It won't fire. So we get calls all the time in the fall, and there's only a couple of possibilities. You're not plugged in and your battery's a little bit low, or there's something here blocking this output, or if you get a flashlight, look in there and you find a bee's nest. No, we got a little problem. You are not going to burn them out, because once that propane fires, it will immediately turn off. They may leave the nest, but they leave the nest behind. So it's important, before you get too far along, to probably get that screen or check this frequently. You can hopefully get on camera. There is a green cap on it, and the reason for the green cap is that at the factory, they put nitrogen in the tires. And the reason for that, I'm told, is that nitrogen, instead of air, runs the tires a little bit cooler. Now, you don't have to find a nitrogen source. We've had people running around all over and going to welding shops wanting to know if they can fill their tires up with nitrogen. If you have to adjust the tires, you can adjust it with air. Air is fine. It's just something they do at the factory. The important thing is to make sure you check tires days before you leave, and then a couple of days before you leave, to make sure they're not losing air. And then it's important to make sure that you have the tires at the air pressure indicated on the sidewall of the tire. Further important is to make sure both tires on the side of the coach have exactly the same air pressure. It has to be tested when they're cold, not when you've driven 3 miles down the road. It's got to be cold test, and they have to be the same. If they aren't, if one tire is underinflated, just like in your car, you're overworking the tire. And what can happen is one of these tires might fail. one is underused or underinflated, and that's working real hard, and then you're overworking the other tire. This panel is not something that customers really have to get into very often, other than to show you what's behind it. This is the back of your refrigerator. Your refrigerator does run on electric. Right now, there's a demo. This isn't plugged in on the electric side yet. The electric plug is right here. What you also see is this little hose. It's not a plug at the end of the hose. It's actually just trying to keep spiders and things out. It takes distilled water from in the refrigerator and deposits it in this little cup, and it will evaporate. The other manufacturer has a larger hose about this size, and they sometimes attach it here, or they sometimes simply take and push it through the hole here. So you may see from time to time a little bit of water coming out of here, and that's okay. The only other thing to remember is this refrigerator runs on both propane and electric. And the way it works inside is if you push the auto button, this will be on house power. If the power goes out or you unplug, in the auto mode, it'll automatically go over to propane. Okay, the only hitch to that is you have to remember, if this goes over to propane, with the same temperature setting inside for gas and electric, it'll get colder. So you want to be careful not to set the electric cold setting too low, because then if it goes over to propane, you could freeze both the freezer and the refrigerator and the contents in it. So really not much for a customer to get into. And also, by the way, that black vent indicates because the refrigerator is in the slide, it's venting there. On other coaches, the vent will be, if the refrigerator is not in a slide, the vent will be on top. Nothing for you to have to deal with at all. They work great. So we just like to show people what's in here. Moving back this way, we talk about stabilizers, and these are electric stabilizers. And notice I said stabilizer and not a jack. Motorhomes have jacks, either hydraulic or electric. This is simply a stabilizer. By hitting the extend button, what happens on this particular manufacturer, one side will come down and touch the ground, and when that one touches, the other one will come down. Now, if you want to lift the coach, before you put the jacks down, or the stabilizers, you want to put something under wood blocks, or they make large, they come in a package, large, they look like large Lego blocks. So you're going to use that to stabilize the coach from left to right, and on the front of the coach where the hitch is, what picks the coach up for the hitching process levels the coach from front to back. Okay? What's important, by the way, about leveling is you want to try to be as level as possible because of the refrigerator and the fluid that goes through the refrigerator. The refrigerator doesn't like to be more than 3 degrees left and right, or about 7 degrees forward. I often see when I'm driving to work, RVs along the road, you know, people park them at their houses and they've got them parked at some kind of terrible angles, and I'm hoping they've turned the refrigerator off. Come this way. You have a hitch here, and this isn't the idea where you can tow a third item, but what you can do is you can put a platform back here like what hunters use. They call them a deer rack. You can put a bicycle rack back here. The only thing we want to remind you of, if you have a family and put 4 bicycles, let's make sure the handlebars aren't bouncing off the back of the coach, okay, and marring the coach. This is a ladder to get on the roof, and yes, you can get on the roof. No, you cannot put chairs up there and watch NASCAR. It wasn't designed for that. It is designed for people to go up and clean the roof or check it, and the idea would be to wear some kind of deck shoe, have the stabilizers down, have a safety person down here keeping an eye on you, and if you're doing any wash work, have somebody hand things up to you, or you can put things in a bucket and pull them up, safety first. And also, you want to make sure that you get an extendable brush, because once you get on the roof, it's kind of a whiteout up there. You can kind of get vertigo, so it's important to have glasses that darken for you. Stay in the middle of the coach always. Work from front to back, and very carefully when you get to the back, hand things down, and very carefully come down the ladder. You'll notice the ladder is very high. they kind of want to discourage people from going up on it, especially kids. So it's a good thing to have a step ladder here, or at least a small step ladder, so you can go from here to here. Ladders are usually rated somewhere around 250 pounds or so. Check your owner's manual. I'm sure you haven't noticed that I'm full figured, but I'm able to get up this ladder, okay, and stay within the weight limit. Okay, coming this way, we have the awning. Most of the awnings today are electric, and this one's been fully deployed. It's a very light wind day today. I generally tell people, and if you saw the flag over here, over our business, the American flag, it's gently blowing in the breeze. Okay, but if I were to go someplace, go hiking on a trail, go shopping, whatever, and I'm gonna leave my site, put it in, okay? I have seen these things fold up in a heavy wind. This strut will kind of help protect it, but don't push it. And this sign here is telling you that this nut has put a little friction, so you can pull this down and you can see that it stayed down. Now, why would you do that? If you go to campgrounds, you'll see people always with their awning tipped. You don't want water to build up on the awning for two reasons. One, at some point it's coming down and you could be under it, or two, it can damage the awning. So before you put the awning up again, make sure you just push that up again and don't over tighten it. Okay? Here we have a couple extra things. You have a cable or satellite out here. So if somebody's doing some grilling out here, or it's a nice evening, you want to watch TV and set up a TV, and of course, there's house power out here. I want to point out the fact that this plug, the one for the refrigerator and the one in the front bay that we looked at, they are on a ground fault. Most of the plugs on the outside of the coach are on a ground fault. So if you find something's not working on house power, the first thing to look for is the ground fault in the coach. Some coaches have two. So that's usually what causes some kind of a failure there. But again, the good news is if house power goes out, the refrigerator is on auto, that'll go over to propane. So if you're not with the coach, you won't lose the contents of your refrigerator. Let's see, moving on this coach. What's important here is a safety tip. When dealing with the steps, there's a couple of different kinds of steps. Make sure that you follow the directions for opening, especially if you have children around. Pull here to open. First one comes down, let's not catch your wrist. Be careful. Next one comes out. If you have one of the ones where they've got the stairs inside, when you open the door, okay, it has to be fully open because those fold-out steps have little mechanisms on the side that have to clear the doorway. Also, some of them are spring-loaded, so if you unlatch them, it'll gently come down. A lot of them aren't spring-loaded, so if you have children again and they open that handle, it's coming at them. So let's make sure everybody's overly enthusiastic. Let's be careful. So let's go inside. Well, now that we've finished the outside, we're going to take a walk around the inside and point out some things, especially some safety things we like to point out first and foremost, because that's at the top of our list is your safety. So there are three safety devices right off the bat. Overhead, just like you'd have at home, there'll be a smoke detector. Down here, I don't know if the camera can get that shot, there is a small black box with a pilot light on it, and it's an LED light. You cannot turn it off. It is a liquid propane leak detector. Now, it would take months for that to run a battery bank down, but if it did, it has an alarm that goes on with a high-pitched squeal. If that happens, it's telling you there's something compromising the propane system. Usually what it is over here, somebody has leaned against one of the burner knobs, and so gas is leaking out. So that will sense that there's something happening. So we would recommend you turn everything off, air the coach out, turn the propane bottles off that we looked at on our outside tour, and turn those off and just let it air out. And just note that it's a very sensitive device. If you atomize something like perfume or simple green to clean the floor, try not to atomize too much around that, or you'll get a false setting. So that's one safety device. The other one on the ceiling, in this coach, this has a smoke detector here. It's battery powered. It's not wired in like that one. And in the bedroom, you'll also find a CO detector. Sometimes you won't see a CO detector on the ceiling like that. It'll be in combination with the propane leak detector. The next thing you want to point out, in this particular coach behind this door, call it door number 1, are the controls for the coach. And the first thing that people generally want to do after they turn the lights on is they want to start opening up slides. So the one thing we recommend is before you open these slides, check your outside bays to make sure anything you need you get out before the slides are put out. Especially if you have bay doors that are under slides. In this case, we have 3 slide switches, 1, 2, and 3. That's all it says is 1, 2, and 3. It doesn't tell you which one it is. So you might want to mark these with those little embossing tape things, or at least get a memory set for which one you're opening. Now, before you open a slide, you want to be careful that you can see before you open things like this drawer here. Okay, if that drawer were open a little bit and that slide was all the way in, more likely this one, and the slide started out, if you're not looking at the slide as you're holding the button, the slide, the edge of the slide will catch that drawer and it'll just mangle it. So you want to be very careful before you leave on your trip. Make sure things are shut, and then when you go to this panel to open a slide, and there are 3 slides, make sure there's nothing open. That means you may have to squeeze down to go to the other end of the coach to check some cupboard doors someplace. In the back of the coach, there's doors on either end of a couch, and there's 4 overhead doors. So just make sure nothing popped open. Next, we have your control panel. I mentioned you have, I guess I can stand on this side, your 3 slide switches. Next is your awning switch. And again, we like you to kind of touch the switch with one hand and watch the awning deploy with the other hand. Make sure there's nothing to block the awning going out like a tree, and same thing coming in. Okay, make sure the top of the awning is clear before you bring it in. The awning itself has a light. There's a master light here for ceiling lights. And the next thing, there's a switch that says tank heater. And that's for cold weather, not frigid weather, not middle of winter weather, but it's a heater for the holding tanks. One of the problems with this is people turn it on and run the battery down quickly and don't realize what that switch is. They think it's something else. So you might want to take that fuse out of the fuse box to make sure nobody trips that accidentally. The next thing is your water pump switch. You need the water pump on if you're not connected to an outside water source, what we refer to as a city water hookup. That would be the pump that takes water out of your freshwater holding tank, and we talked about that outside. The next thing are 2 buttons. It says gas and electric water heater. So the first one, if you activate it, is going to activate what we mentioned outside. You'd hear this ticking sound, and you may even hear the propane hot water tank fire up. Okay, fine. If it doesn't, it'll turn itself off after it ticks 3 separate times. If it doesn't light, there's a little light in here that says DSI, which means direct spark ignition failure. Just turn the switch off, wait a couple of seconds, turn it back on. Sometimes if it's a wet, soggy day, you may have to cycle it a couple of times. On the other hand, if you're plugged into house power at a service post, you can turn on the electric side. But remember, the electric side is an energy gobbler. It uses, on this coach, almost 1/3 of your power. It's about 1,500 watts. The next thing we have in your panel is a control panel that if you push these little buttons, it will tell you the volume of fluid in any of your tanks. They have a black tank and then 2 gray tanks. I don't think this coach has a 3rd tank, but sometimes the panel will have a button that you don't need. The very first button is always your batteries, and as you can see here, all the lights are lit, indicate they're 100% charged, but it would say that because we're plugged into house power, so it's in a charge mode anyways. The next tank is your fresh water supply. So right now, there's little or no water in the coach at all. Okay? Right under here, I'll step aside this way, there are two control sets. One is a thermostat that is just like your house. You push a button, it goes through modes. Now the biggest mistake, and we get calls on this all the time, the first push of the button that turns it on says fan. And sometimes people mistake that as being the air conditioner or the furnace. It's just a fan setting. In that case, it's the fan setting for the overhead central air system, but that hasn't turned the AC on. That just adjusts the speed. You push another button, it might be furnace. Push it again, same button, it'll go to AC. You can set the temperature. One thing about the AC we get some complaints about, it's not seemingly working very well. If it's 100 degrees outside, don't set the AC low side more than 20 degrees under outside temperature. So if it's 100 outside, don't set it lower than 80. As it gets cooler, you can drop the temperature. And that's generally true for your house as well. The next thing, on this particular coach, it says Maxi Air. In the kitchen over my head is a special fan. It's generally option on some coaches, and this will open the vent electrically. It can set the speed, and it has kind of a thermostat setting too. And that's a real handy thing to have. Sometimes you may just want to move a little air in the coach, or you have pets in here, and let's not forget our furry friends. If you're going to leave your pets in the coach, hopefully they aren't big barkers and disturb people, and also you want to make sure you've left them some kind of ventilation. Preferably, you want to be able to leave the AC on if necessary, or the heat, but you also want to set this fan so just in case the heat or AC goes off, that fan can open automatically and it will provide some ventilation. This particular fan has a little umbrella setting on it, which means if it rains, it'll automatically close the vent. Now let's get to something that people always want to know about, the refrigerator. This is a particularly nice refrigerator. It's a double door, double freezer, and it is what we refer to as an RV refrigerator. We've been getting a lot of questions on this lately. Now a standard RV from the past refrigerator is usually about half this, called 8 cubic foot. It's both gas and electric. Remember outside I said that every RV usually has two electric systems, house electricity power and 12 volt power. So what happens is when you turn this on, there's a mode button here. If you hit AU, which means auto, it looks for electricity first. If you're plugged in, it'll find it. Simply turn it on in electricity. If it doesn't find electricity, or the electricity goes out, it will automatically go over to the propane side and keep the refrigerator cool. The only caveat to this is the battery up front in the coach has to be charged enough, because that 12 volt battery is what powers the igniter that ignites the little propane flame, and it uses very little propane. It's about the tip of your finger size flame that brings this over on the gas side. One of the things to remember is these refrigerators get colder on a propane setting than they do on an electric setting. So you don't want to get too crazy and make this a cold temperature on the electric side while you're away from the coach and the power goes out. It goes over to gas, and on the same setting, it's going to get colder. So if you don't want to see frozen beer or frozen pickles in the refrigerator, be a little bit careful of the temperature you set on the electric side, because when it goes over to gas, automatically, it will get a little colder. Next we have, in this case, a microwave, and this is one of the larger microwaves. I mention that because typically in coaches, they're slightly smaller, and you usually have to push a button to open. This one has a handle, and we've been cautioning people to make sure, probably a good idea to take this glass plate out, wrap it in a towel, and put it in a drawer. Some of these larger ones with a handle on the outside, they kind of tend to open easily, and sometimes you get some rough roads in the spring from the wintertime, and a plate will break. On the smaller ones, we recommend you at least take the plate, wrap it in a towel, put it inside. We haven't had too many complaints about those falling out and breaking. Next is the stove. On this one, it has a flip top glass which you can double flip it over. Just remember, if you're using the burners, let them cool down before you bring it down. But the idea of this is so you have a little bit more shelf space, okay? Now, these are the controls for the burner top of the stove. To light a stove, all you have to do is turn it to the first mark, and this is the igniter. You hear the click? You can click it as many times as you need to till the gas flows and it ignites. The one big thing that we get with people, damaging things, is if you look at the igniter, the arrow points to the right. You must always turn the igniter to the right. If you turn it to the left, you will strip the knob. And it takes quite a while to get one sent to you. So try not to do that. So it also has a light in this particular model. And so when you turn it on, sometimes that light may turn to red. That tells you that there's a burner on. So if you're not cooking, that might be setting off your propane leak detector. Now, new in the last year or so, you're able to light the oven with this igniter. And the reason that's a big deal is in the past, ovens had to be lit with a candle lighter, like you'd light your grill. Get on your hands and knees, and way in the back of the center, there'll be a little tray, and you're going to light a pilot light. But the way to do it was turn to the first click for the oven, hold it. That is allowing the gas to flow to the pilot. And then you had to get on your hands and knees and duck down. If you're adjusting trifocal glasses, that's fun, and light that pilot. Now, once you light that pilot, you have to hold it for a few seconds to let a sensor heat up. Once that heats up, you can let go and adjust the temperature. Well, now they're going to let you use this igniter. But some people have a little trouble grasping the idea. Your grill at home. Most people know with your grill at home, and I say most people that know, to light your grill, what do you do first? Open the top. You don't want to fill the top of that with the top down, fill the inside of the cover of your grill with propane, and then hit an igniter. What's going to happen? It would blow the cover up. In this case, it'll blow the door and catch you right in the knees. So you want to be careful to make sure you stand away either side, push that in till the propane flows, hit the igniter. Sometimes it takes a little bit because it's a very little flame. Now, if you're having trouble lighting either the refrigerator or the oven or even the stove, it means that you haven't used the RV in a while and there's air in the propane lines coming from the front tanks. So the easiest thing to do is start the furnace. Just turn the furnace on and let it, that will draw in propane through the system and everything should light up fine. So we get a lot of complaints about people dry camping and their refrigerator didn't turn on. Well, you haven't been using your propane much. So that's an important factor. So we've covered microwave, stove, refrigerator. We covered 3 safety devices. And the next thing we're going to look at is how is this coach power regulated? And this one, they're always, almost always, near the floor. And it's sometimes confusing to open the door on this. This one is horizontal here, or vertical. And if you open this up, you will see inside breaker switches, just like you have at home. I can tell you right now that the electric hot water switch is off. So if you want to turn this on, you have to turn this one on and the switch up there. But all these are marked. There's 2 main switches. Because the coach is 50 amp, it has 2 main incoming power lines from that plug outside. But they go on and off together with a single switch. Then you have your water heater, you have, this coach is made for a washer and dryer, separate switches for that, microwave, refrigerator. There's an electric fireplace in back and the AC unit. So if I was going to turn the AC unit off, that would be the switch that I would turn off. Now below that are automotive style fuses. Most of them in this coach, most of them are 15 amps, and you will actually get a little trouble light in some coaches if it blows a fuse someplace, if something got overworked. That will tell you actually what circuit it is. If you put a new fuse in and it blows again, then you have to have our service department look at it to make sure there's something going on here, but the fuses are made to protect something in the coach, just like at your home. Although most homes don't have fuses anymore, they have breaker switches. Next, we go to the wonderful bathroom here. I'm going to step aside here and see if the camera can check inside. I want to direct your attention, if you can see my finger pointing at, there's a hook for the doors. They're sliding glass doors. They're kind of expensive, so make sure you hook and latch them. And that being said, they're using now, what I have my hand on right here, is a pocket door. Whether it's a pocket door or a swinging door, before you leave the coach and you're getting ready to travel, it's important to make sure you lock things down, like shower drawer. Make sure the spray handle in the shower is locked in place so it's not swinging around when you're driving. And I really like the fact these pocket doors save a lot of space. Coming back into the bedroom, again, here's a pocket door, and they have a lockdown mechanism up here. You've got to make sure that's in place. And plenty of cupboard space here. I think there are two in the very back of the coach, and right here, the windows are very similar. It says exit. There's a red handle here. As a matter of safety, if you had to get out of the coach and you pull these handles, that window will swing wide open. They have a way to mount a television up here. You can see the bed is in a slide and has gone out with windows on each side. And there's also storage under the bed. Now, one of the things we tell customers when they're looking at coaches is to understand what size bed they have. We want to take a couple of minutes to talk about the bed. And obviously it looks like a bed, but you know, beds come in different sizes. And just so you know, when you're looking to buy or looking to get linen for the bed, it's important to make sure you know the length of the bed. This particular bed is 60 wide by 80 long, which means it's a full queen. But sometimes in a floor plan like this, this will be 60 by 75 because you can see in the slide that this bed is going to come in up against this vanity. So it's important when you're buying a coach or you're looking at it for the first time so you know what you're getting into. They make various size beds, and you can check with manufacturers to see what they offer in different floor plans. In the RV business, we refer to the 80-20 rule. If you want a bigger bed, you may have to give up something else in the floor plan. If you want to give up a little bed space, go to a queen short bed, you can get something else, more cabinets or whatever. But that's an important factor to find out before you get to the show through. When you're looking to purchase an RV, if that's a critical factor for you, make sure you check to make sure the model that you're picking has the bed size that you would like. Plenty of closet spaces in here, but again, you have drawers and a sliding door here in this magnificent closet. So it either has to be locked back in place, but better than that, there's a latch right here. Plenty of room for hanging clothes. And again, making sure drawers are closed. You should find power along the sides of the bed. And that is handy for people who may want to keep phones charged up or CPAC units, that kind of thing. So that's pretty much it for our inside tour. For more information, you can go to our website and check any of the links that you find on particular topics that we'll be doing in the future. So if there's something in particular like winterizing or de-winterizing, we're going to have some YouTube information on that.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, check out our description below for more information, and if you're looking for your next camper purchase, please consider Myers RV for your next investment. Thanks again, we'll see you next time.